Advisor Jen Doss.
Well, let's see if we're actually running.
Also held constructive
Drop a 1 in the chat if you can see me and hear me.
issues, including those related to Russia's war against Ukraine, the Middle East, of course, the DPRK, the South China Sea, and Burma. And they also discussed cross-strait issues. And with that, I'll take some questions.
Thanks, John. A couple of just basic fact pattern questions. Can you confirm that the initial reports suggest that the attack drone that killed the U.S. forces was misidentified for a U.S. drone that was returning to that base?
I cannot.
Can you update us on has the U.S. definitively confirmed attribution of the attack beyond just vaguely Iran-backed militias? Do you have a specific militia group that you know launched this attack?
We're still working our way through that right now.
You said that the president was still weighing his options. Does that imply that the president right now has not made the decision how he wants to respond?
I won't get ahead of the president's decision-making. As I said, he met twice with the national security team, including not very long ago. When we have something to speak to, we'll speak to it.
And speaking to it, will we hear directly from the president? Will he speak to the American people about this attack and his response when it happens?
Well, he mentioned it yesterday in South Carolina. I don't have anything on his schedule to speak to, but I have no doubt that he'll continue to communicate with the American people about how important it is that these missions continue and that our troops and our facilities are safe.
And last one for me, has the president directed any change to force posture in the region to protect American troops there?
We don't talk about force posture changes one way or another, and we certainly don't pre-announce them, particularly when it comes to areas on the ground that are potentially under threat. I can just tell you that the president's confident that the Defense Department under Secretary Austin will do what they got to do to look after force protection issues.
John, do you expect the president would go to Dover for the dignified transfer when these Americans are returned to the United States?
I don't have anything on his schedule to speak to.
Given the fact that while there are Americans in harm's way frequently, it has been a while since we have had this kind of an incident resulting in deaths. Do you think that is a consideration of the public type of response? There are a range of responses the president could use. They go from, military strikes to sometimes it's cyber, sometimes it's things the public cannot see. Do you believe this event rises to a level where whatever the president's decision is would have a public, we would know when?
You mean you're going to know? Well, again, without getting ahead of the president's decision-making, I won't do that. And as I said in my opening statement, I'm not going to telegraph punches. We'll make these decisions on our own time. As I said, the president will choose for himself how he wants to respond. And as I said in the opening statement, we'll do it fully cognizant of the fact that now, and what just happened, American lives have been taken. And so his decisions, whatever they are, will be informed by all those circumstances. What that looks like and when that comes, I'm just not able to say right now.
Thanks, Admiral. Was this strike in Jordan fundamentally different than what American forces have been facing for months now? In other words, does the U.S. believe this was a deliberate attempt at escalation?
It's fundamentally different now because we have 3 families who just got the worst possible news. That's different. And the scope of the wounded now, more than 30 injured, some of them seriously, that's also different. And it's possible that the number of wounded could go up. As you may know, traumatic brain injury symptoms, for instance, don't present themselves right away, and that is a very serious physical injury itself. But this wasn't the first drone attack on an American facility in the region. There have been others. And the fact that this one had lethal consequences doesn't mean that the previous ones weren't intended by these Iran-backed militias to have that same effect. This time they killed Americans and they wounded a lot of them. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't have preferred that outcome in the past.
An official has told ABC News, confirming the report about how the troops there had mistakenly identified the drone as one of their own. Can you talk about how this might have gotten past the defense systems at Tower 22?
I think I'm going to let the Defense Department talk about the forensics on this. I'm sure that they are already picking it apart and trying to figure out how this happened, and it'd be inappropriate for me to get ahead of that.
And in your interviews all morning, you didn't rule out a strike in Saigon. Can you just talk a little bit about the array of options in front of the president and For instance, could this be in phases? Could we see a smaller scale one, then a larger scale one later? Like what's the array of options?
No, I'm not going to do that. I appreciate the question. That's why I tried to take it out of the consideration in my opening statement. I'm simply not going to talk about that right now.
Lastly, do you think this could complicate the ongoing ceasefire negotiations to release more hostages?
There's no reason that whatever our response is, there's no reason for that to have an impact on our ability to try to get these hostages released. And as I said last week, so I can say today, those discussions are ongoing. We believe they have been constructive and are moving in a good direction. Don't want to sound sanguine here. There's a lot of work left to be done. We don't have an imminent deal to speak to, but based on the discussions we've had over the weekend and in recent days, we feel it's moving in a good direction.
Thanks, great. John, how does the president balance a desire to not see escalation in the region with a decision to respond?
That's the hard part of it, isn't it, Jeff? I mean, that's what being commander-in-chief is all about, is acting in accordance with our national security interests. What's unacceptable to those interests and what has to be done to protect those interests. There's no easy answer here. And that's why the president is meeting with his national security team, weighing the options before him. He'll do that as he's done in the past in a very careful, deliberate way, so that our national security interests are best preserved.
And has the administration communicated via a third party to Iran the message that you're saying on TV about not wanting to have escalation?
I am not aware, as you and I are speaking, that there's been a private message relayed to leaders in Iran. We have done that in the past, but as you and I are speaking right now, I'm not aware of such a mechanism.
And just on the hostages, can you give us an update on the latest there and what you expect in terms of a ceasefire?
Well, again, the discussions have been pretty constructive. What we're and I want to be careful here because don't want to say anything that would torpedo the deal we're trying to put in place, but. What we're trying to work on is another humanitarian pause of sufficient duration that will allow a large number of hostages to get released. And as you've seen in the past, when we did this back in November, you got to have a pause in the fighting to get them safely out. So that's what we're aiming at. And then, of course, if you get that period of time, whatever that ends up being, then you can take advantage of it to get more humanitarian assistance, and certainly when there's a pause in the fighting, that means there'll be a reduction in civilian casualties, which is also a goal of ours.
Admiral, can you confirm, is the president currently actively considering potential attacks inside Iran?
We are not looking for a war with Iran. We are not seeking a conflict with the regime in a military way. And as I said in the opening, we're not looking to escalate here. This attack over the weekend was escalatory. Make no mistake about it. And it requires a response. Make no mistake about that. I will not get ahead of the president's decision making.
So you're not saying either way whether striking inside Iran is or isn't.
We are
on the
not looking
table?
for a war with Iran, MJ. I am not going to speak to the president's decisions.
And the administration's assessment for a number of months now has been that Iran does not want a direct war with the U.S. either. Does yesterday change that assessment?
I'm not at liberty to discuss or to speculate about what the supreme leader wants or doesn't want. Clearly, these attacks continue, and now they've had lethal consequences. We know these groups are supported by Iran. Make no mistake about that. We know that. And this administration has taken action in the past to hold them accountable, and we've taken action over the last 3 years to hold Iran accountable for a range of destabilizing activities. Issued more than 500 sanctions, or 500 entities sanctioned, just since we came into office, as well as changing our force posture in the Middle East appropriately. So we'll just, we'll continue to look at the options available to us.
Is it clear to you now whether the attack yesterday was at Iran's direct urging, or if this was more a proxy group that was mostly acting on its own?
I'm not going to talk about intelligence issues. We know that Iran supports these groups. The degree to which they order and direct is something that intelligence analysts will look at. We know they support them. We know they resource them. We know they train them. And we know that they're certainly not discouraging these attacks, whether it's attacks by the Houthis, what Hamas did on the 7th of October, what Hezbollah has proven capable of doing, and now, of course, what these militia groups continue to do in places like Iraq and Syria, and now Jordan.
And just one last one on the UNRWA controversy. Israel says that they have information about 13 employees who were connected to the October 7th attack. Do you have any reason to believe that that might have been more widespread, that there could be information that later indicates that it was beyond those 13 people?
I haven't seen any information that affirmatively makes that case, that it's more than now 13. I think last week we were looking at a dozen. That's why an investigation is so dang important here, so that we can look at the scope of the problem set. But you got 13,000 UNRWA employees, the UN Relief and Works Agency. You got 13,000 of them in Gaza alone. And as I said last week, let's not impugn the good work of a whole agency because of the potential bad actions here by a small number. I am not dismissing the seriousness of the allegations against those employees. And whether there's going to be more that will be found, hopefully the investigation will give us more insight. It is important. And look, the UNRWA staff, Commissioner General, and the UN Secretary General Guterres last week made it clear they're taking this seriously. That's our expectation too. It's really important that this investigation be as thorough and as transparent and as credible as possible, and we're going to be watching real closely.
John, can I push you a little bit more on the hostages and the linkage between the potential linkage between the hostages and whatever action you guys decide to take? One of the things you guys have talked about since October 7th is how intertwined the region is, whether it's Lebanon and Hezbollah or Hamas or Iran or the Houthis, and the difficulty with not wanting to set fire and a spark in one place that then goes all around the region. So what gives you any confidence that if you guys are close to a deal on the hostages and then the president orders a strike, that deal doesn't fall apart as a result of outrage and anger in the region at the actions of the United States? And how does the president make that calculation given 6 Americans still in Gaza and the other hostages and everything else?
I didn't say we were confident, though, Mike. We're mindful of the way some actors in the region are trying to make connections across the region. What I said was there's no reason why our work on a hostage deal needs to be affected or impacted by what happened over the weekend or what we do about what happened over the weekend, and we will respond. We still want to keep the work going, our shoulders to the wheel on this hostage deal, and we'll just have to see where it
makes
goes.
you weak.
I also want to repeat what I said earlier. We're not overly sanguine here. We're not cocky. We understand there's a lot of hard work ahead, and that work ahead of us diplomatically certainly might be affected by events elsewhere in the region, not just what happened in Jordan and what might come as a result of that. But there's no reason why it should, and that's why we're going to stay at that task.
Over here. Thanks, Kirby. Given these deaths, does the White House acknowledge that the previous retaliatory strikes that it has taken in the region have been ineffective at protecting American troops?
The strikes that we have taken in the past have definitely had an impact on degrading and disrupting the activities of some of these groups. Clearly, they have decided to keep conducting those attacks. And now it's had lethal consequences for American troops. And so we will weigh an additional set of options before us. The president will make his decision to respond appropriately. The attacks need to stop.
Does the president have all the legal authority he believes that he needs to respond to these attacks?
Yes.
What is the legal basis?
Article 2, Constitution, Commander-in-Chief, self-defense of our troops.
Doesn't believe he needs additional authority from Congress.
The president has the authority to take the action he needs to protect our troops and our facilities overseas under Article 2.
Thanks.
The president faces a great deal of political pressure here at home, with the Republicans, for example, calling for direct strikes on Iran. Does the president feel that pressure, and how much does that pressure weigh on his decision making?
The pressure the president's feeling, if you want to call it that, is to make sure we can continue to protect and defend our national security interests in the region. First and foremost, his mind is solidly, as I put in my opening statement, on the families of those who just got the worst possible news you can, and troops that are in the hospital trying to recover. Number two, on the vital mission sets that our troops are performing across the region, in this particular case, a counter-ISIS region. That's the pressure he's under, to make sure that those troops get the support that they need, get the resources they need, and that the mission is able to continue, and that our national security interests in the region, which are wide and varied, are preserved and protected.
Just one other thing, if I may. You said earlier that this attack was escalatory, but the United States doesn't want a war. Do you believe that Iran wants a war?
That's up to Iran to decide, and for Iran to speak to. I can't, as I said earlier, speak for the supreme leader. I wouldn't do that. Clearly, there's a calculus by at least the IRGC that conducting these
The white supreme leader?
is worth the risk that they're taking.
Holy shit, this is so boring.
We obviously are going to keep working to change that calculus.
I don't miss covering the press briefings at all.
Stoltenberg is in Washington. What are you hearing from the NATO allies? Are you sharing with you any concern about the possibility of a wider war?
You talking about the Middle East? Yeah, we're glad the Secretary General's here. I think he met with Secretary Austin this morning. I know he's meeting with Jake Sullivan today. Lots on the agenda. I won't speak for our allies or the Secretary General. I think it's safe to say that many of our European allies certainly share our concerns about what's going on in the Middle East. I mean, my goodness, many of them are participants, willing participants in our coalition in the Red Sea to protect shipping there. So clearly they have concerns about that. And I have no doubt that Secretary General will raise those issues with Jake and did raise it with Secretary Austin.
Another question, if I may, about the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Several American allies are suspending their aid to the agency, but others are saying, okay, we can't cut off money right now amid warnings of famine, the collapse of the health system, and so many Palestinians displaced. The agency is saying that it will run out of money very soon. Do you fear that suspending the American aid to this agency is going to deepen the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? Do you have a plan B, an alternative to bring aid to the Palestinians?
I think a lot of it's going to depend on what the investigation finds and what accountability measures and corrective measures UNRWA is willing to make as a result of what happened. I mean, these are serious allegations, even though it's a small number. Percentage-wise of the 13,000 are on the ground in Gaza. I mean, this is serious, and they are taking it seriously. So let's see where the investigation goes. We understand that they are very, very dependent on donor contributions, and the United States has been the leading donor for many, many years. We have suspended our contributions to UNRWA pending the results of this investigation. All the more reason that, as I said, this investigation be credible, transparent, and thorough, and frankly, timely.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Green. I wanted to ask about the border. President Biden talked about shutting down the border on the basis of national security. Are there not steps that he could use under executive authority to some measures to kind of seal some of the border efforts?
He has said he's willing to use executive measures, and you know, if he gets the bill passed, if he gets border funding. And it includes those authorities, he'll use those authorities.
Why not? Why wait till Congress? Why not?
We need legislative support for border security measures, and we need the funding to be able to put in place border security measures that the president can utilize. He has done some things like putting U.S. troops down there to alleviate some of the responsibilities or administrative responsibilities of Border Patrol, but we need this funding.
And if I could ask about Venezuela, is the president considering any steps to take against Venezuela, whether it's tightening sanctions, regarding the High Court's decision to uphold the ban on the only viable opposition candidate, posing a challenge to Maduro?
The Maduro regime, when they signed on in October down in Barbados, made some commitments about opposition political parties
Are
about
they
free and
friend
fair
or
elections
foe?
and what all that meant. And they haven't taken those actions. Now, accordingly, they got till April to do so. So we have options available to us. I'm not going to preview any of those at this time, but we certainly have options with respect to sanctions and that kind of thing that we could take. They've got till April. They need to make the right decisions here and allow opposition members to run for office and release the political prisoners that they're holding right now.
Thank you. Admiral, so the U.S. is backing Israel annihilating Hamas, which is an Iranian proxy. Why isn't the U.S. doing the same thing with other Iranian proxies, like the one in Iraq, the one in Syria, which resulted in the death of the 3 servicemen, and down the road maybe in Yemen? Why is there's not a consistency?
Hamas violated a ceasefire that was in place.
I don't think Simon Atib is there today.
Basically started this war.
I mean, he never gets called on, but he's usually at least there.
As they fight this war, we are not. Go back to what I said in the beginning. We're not looking for a war with Iran. And
already at war with Iran, isn't that clear?
We're not looking for a war with Iran.
And can you...
John, I just want to clarify 2 of your previous answers in this briefing. Are you suggesting, in response to the border question, that the president is withholding executive action on the border until he gets the money that is part of this supplemental?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that the way forward, the proper way forward, is to get this supplemental passed.
And then, in response to MJ's question earlier, it sounded like the administration has ruled out strikes within Iran.
Jackie, I appreciate the question. I think you can understand. I hope you can understand. I'm not going to telegraph punches here. We are not looking for a war with Iran. We are not looking to escalate the tensions any more than they already have been escalating. In fact, everything we've done has been designed to try to de-escalate those tensions. That said, this was a very serious attack. It had lethal consequences. We will respond, and we'll respond appropriately. I'm not going to telegraph what that's going to look like.
The question, though, was if you were actively considering targets inside Iran, and your answer was, we don't see conflict with Iran, which indicates that the administration would view strikes within Iran as escalatory. And so is it that the administration ultimately does not hold Iran responsible for these attacks, or that the current level of risk and loss to U.S. troops is somehow acceptable?
I do appreciate the question and the chance to say it again. I am not going to telegraph punches for the President of the United States. I'm not going to get ahead of his decision space and how he's going to respond.
Trump doesn't need you to telegraph punches. That's all right, Captain Kirby Face.
This attack had lethal consequences, which these attacks in the past have not had. And as I said in my opening statement, as we work through what those options are, we'll be mindful and informed by the fact that there are now 3 American soldiers that have been killed.
So it's clear, obviously, that didn't work. Does the president have any regret over not punching back harder in any of the prior responses that he's taken to these proxy attacks on U.S. forces?
I think I would push back on the idea that we didn't push back harder. That we have taken...
That's what he does with his boyfriend.
Iran economically. We have certainly taken...
Pushes back harder.
And more aggressive steps to go after these groups. We're certainly taking aggressive action against the Houthis to try to defend shipping in the Red Sea. I mean, this idea that somehow we've just, whistled past the graveyard here and walked away from the challenge that Iran poses just isn't borne out by the facts. These proxy groups have been attacking our troops and our facilities in Iraq and Syria well before this administration as well. And
for instance, Mike Waltz said this morning that when you're trying to play defense constantly rather than punching back in a meaningful way, this blood is on this administration's hands. What is the response from the White House to an accusation like that?
What I would tell you and I would tell the congressman is we're mindful of what Iran's doing in the region. And we have taken aggressive action against these proxy groups and on their influence in the region. And there are decisions yet to come. So let the president make his decisions. Let him weigh these options, and then we'll act. These groups have choices to make, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they make the right choice here. But the idea that we have somehow laid down and not pushed back on Iran is simply not borne out by the facts.
John, in Israel over the weekend, some ministers from the Netanyahu government attended a conference that is calling for Israel's resettlement of Gaza. Did the administration notice that? Did you have any
Yeah, we
view on
noticed
that?
it. Some of this rhetoric and the language that was attributed to some of these ministers at this event, irresponsible, reckless, incendiary, I'd go so far as to say, and certainly doesn't comport.
He sounds like an auctioneer. He's just mumbling and then saying and just drawing out the uhs. He's like Calm down, Kirby face. You'd be all right.
Look, I wouldn't, you got a couple of ministers in the cabinet using this reckless behavior or conducting this reckless behavior and making these incendiary comments. That doesn't mean that we still don't have an open line of communication with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his cabinet, the war cabinet, and that they haven't been receptive to listening to us and to our messages. These are individual cabinet members. They can speak for themselves and what they said and what they did. It doesn't comport with our view, and we find it reckless.
In the back.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. You said that the president, in his response, has authorization under Article 2. Does that mean that he's planning to bypass Congress in any matter of war in terms of this response?
I'm not going to get ahead of his decision making. He has the authority under Article 2 as Commander-in-Chief, and as we have in the past, so we will in the future appropriately inform leaders in Congress about what we're doing in keeping with that authority.
Okay, so I just want to follow up because the president was sent a letter on Friday from a bipartisan group of lawmakers, and he had been accused of unauthorized strikes against the Houthis by bypassing Congress. They said no president, regardless of political party, has the constitutional authority to bypass Congress on matters of war. Do you think that that would apply here, given this escalation?
We're not at war with the Houthis. We're not looking for a war with Iran. The president is comfortable that he has the appropriate legal authorities to act in self-defense of our ships, our sailors, and our troops and our facilities at sea or shore.
Right. Isn't it time to involve the American people? I mean, given the fact that the American people were not happy about,
I suspect the American people are not happy about attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. I also suspect they're not happy about seeing American troops killed at a base in Jordan. The president has the authority to defend those troops and those facilities, and he'll do that.
He's weighing all of his options. This is an election year. Is the president looking at his polling when he's weighing all of these options? Is the president looking at what?
My goodness. That's a heck of a question. He's not looking, ma'am, let me just stop you right there.
Let me finish my question.
Commander-in-Chief is not looking at polling or considering the electoral calendar when he's defending.
How they feel about the war on Gaza?
Oh, now, can I answer the question? He's not looking at.
He interrupts her 3 times, and then he asks if he can answer the question. What a piece of shit. God.
To the contrary is offensive.
Is he looking at the polling with respect to,
Ma'am.
does the American public want a broader Middle East conflict when he weighs his political decision-making?
Ma'am, I've answered that question.
Okay, let's go. You didn't answer that question. Is he weighing that?
He is not concerning himself.
His hoo-ha hurts right now. He needs to go sit down somewhere.
To weigh in on whether they want
Ma'am,
made in America
I have
stamped
answered your-
on the bombs
Ma'am, I've
that are
answered
going
your
to be
question.
dropped.
We're going to move on. Go ahead, Phil.
Prostitute.
You touched on this briefly in response, I think, to Jackie's question, but what is the president's response to Republican critics who are of the mind that this attack was the result of perceived weakness? For instance, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee said that President Biden's fear of escalation has morphed into a doctrine of appeasement.
They can speak for themselves. That's obviously not the way we see this. We have held Iran accountable, as I've said, through various means and methods. We will continue to do that. We'll continue to act to defend our troops and our facilities and the missions and our national security interests.
And then a follow-up on the border. The terms of the Senate deal that are under discussion would give DHS expulsion authority if border encounters hit an average of 4,000 a day over the course of a week. Does the president consider that threshold of daily encounters a crisis?
I'm not going to negotiate in public.
I'm not asking, of course.
You're asking me about a specific provision that you allege is in the deal. And as Corrine has said many, many times, and she's absolutely right, we're not going to negotiate here in public or what's in or what's not in this deal.
Setting aside the deal in question and waiting for more details to come to light, is there a number in particular with regards to border crossings that the president would see
The
as a
president
crisis?
himself has talked about the fact that there's a crisis going on at the border and the numbers are too high, and we're going to do what we have to do regionally, not just with our own border patrol, but regionally with Mexico and other countries to see if we can get that number down.
Thanks, sir.
A question on Venezuela. My colleagues are reporting that the administration will restore sanctions on the country's energy sector if opposition candidates are not allowed to run. If Venezuela were to lift that ban, would the U.S. not take the options that you were referring to earlier?
A lot's going to depend here on what Maduro and his regime do. They've got till the spring to honor their commitments, the commitments they made back in October, to allow opposition parties and opposition candidates to run freely as qualified for president and to release political prisoners. They've got the they've got decisions they have to make before we weigh what decisions we'll take.
John?
Thanks a lot, Karine. John, the Iranian Foreign Ministry has denied any involvement in this drone strike in northeast Jordan. What's your response to that denial?
They support these groups. They resource them. They provide them weapons. They train them. They certainly aren't discouraging these attacks. Now, to what degree it was directed out of Tehran, I can't say. And I wouldn't get into intelligence assessments one way or another, but clearly they continue to support these groups. So clearly there is a responsibility that appropriately needs to be laid at the feet of leaders in Tehran.
And then you also said the president is consulting with his national security advisors in terms of what steps he may take in response to what happened on Sunday. Will the president also reach out to congressional leaders just to consult with them? Will he reach out to, for instance,
as we have in the past, so we will in the future. We will do appropriate notifications with leaders in Congress, as we have just in the recent past. We'll continue to do that appropriately going forward.
Last question.
Yes. Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Two questions. The AP is reporting that apparently there was a confusion between this enemy drone and another drone that has been launched out of this U.S. installation. And I guess two officials have stated that this was a confusion, and apparently the enemy drone was confused with an American drone that was returning back to that U.S. installation. Do you guys have any information about that?
That was, I think, one of the first questions I got here in the briefing, and as I said then, I can't corroborate those accounts by U.S. officials. The Department of Defense is, as you would expect them to do, going through all the forensics here to figure out exactly what happened and how to make sure it doesn't happen again, and I certainly would not get ahead of them on that.
Just one, going back to the Venezuelan subject that we've been discussing. As you know, Maria Corina Machado is a leading opposition candidate there. She's being banned for running for office for 15 years by the Venezuelan Supreme Court. Does that put things in perspective? Because there's some reporting that the U.S. is expected to renew the sanctions against the Venezuelan oil.
We now dealt with it a few times here. I don't have any additional context to relay to you. Mr. Maduro and his regime have decisions they have to make. We want to see them meet the commitments they made back in October to allow opposition parties and candidates to run appropriately and to release political prisoners. We have decisions to make as well. If they don't do that, they've got till April. We'll see what they do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
What'd you do, tug the leash?
Thanks, Colleen. Has the president called already, or does he plan to speak with the families of the fallen service members?
Don't have any calls to read out. Obviously, and as Kirby started off this briefing, obviously the President and the First Lady sent out their deepest condolences and heartfelt thoughts to the families, to their friends, and also the units, their unit as well. And
She said the eunuchs.
Yesterday was
They keep those in the basement.
not just their families.
Right next to the border children they captured.
The American people, and so obviously we continue to mourn with them. Once we have more to share about a call or outreach, certainly we will let you all know.
The president's scheduled to travel tomorrow on some political travel to Florida. Does he plan to keep that, or is he going to stay back in Washington to consult with his national security team?
So the president will continue his travels tomorrow to Florida. It's a political travel, so any specific questions you may have, I know you're not asking me. Yeah, I know you're not asking me that. Obviously, the campaign will answer those questions about the particular travel tomorrow. The president has been, I think the admiral started off the briefing saying that the president met with his national security team, including Secretary Austin, this morning, and continues to stay focused on what's going on, obviously.
Staying, well, that's good. Thanks.
I just don't have anything to share beyond that.
And why is he going to continue traveling, doing political travel in the midst of this?
Well, as you know, and you hear us say this all the time, the president is present wherever he travels, wherever he goes. It doesn't change in this instance. Obviously, what we saw happen yesterday in Jordan to our service members is it's a sad day. It's deeply troubling. And you heard the president yesterday in South Carolina. I know you were part of the pool that was traveling with him this weekend. He said we shall respond, and he means that. Obviously, we're not going to telegraph what that's going to look like, and the president's going to make that decision. Just don't have anything else to share, but he can be president. He was able to speak to that in South Carolina at a political event and made sure that he lifted up the 3 souls, as he said, who were lost yesterday. And so he can certainly be able to deal with an issue like this, a very important one, obviously, anywhere that he is.
And then lastly, for me, is the administration contemplating any changes to the supplemental funding request for additional needs for security for American troops in the region after this incident, or the potential response to...
Somebody was coughing, so I missed the beginning of your question. I apologize. Changes to the supplemental?
In light of recent events, will more funding be needed?
Oh, I see. So look, I don't have any changes to the supplemental. Obviously, the president back in October put forth his national security request, which is obviously an emergency request, as presidents tend to do. I don't have any changes to that. There's conversations, as you know, you hear say this very often, negotiations happening in the Senate with Republicans and Democrats on the border security piece, which is also part of the supplemental. And we want to see that, obviously, the supplemental pass in its fullness in what the president put forth in October, and that's what we're working towards.
Thanks, Corinne. On the immigration negotiations, over the weekend, former President Trump urged his party to reject the deal. He said it's a very bad bill and it's okay. He said, please blame it on me. Wondering if I can get your reaction to that.
So what I will say is this. You've heard the president. You've heard the president loud and clear. Congress needs to act. They must act. Speaker Johnson and House Republicans should provide the administration with the policy changes and also the funding needed to deal with the border security and also immigration more broadly, as we're talking about an immigration system that has been broken for some time. And let's not forget, I mean, this is the thing, right? What the senators of both Republican side and Democrat side have been talking about, what they're dealing with, the bipartisan agreement that they're coming forward with, are things that House Republicans have said, and Republicans more broadly said they wanted. They have said over and over again, this is what they want to see. They want to see tough changes, right? They want to see something that's actually going to be instrumental in being able to deal with what we're seeing at the border. This is what is being worked on. This is what is being worked on right now. And so if Republicans are serious, if they are serious about addressing the situation at the border, if they are serious about addressing the security at the border, if they are serious about really changing real policies and coming up with policies that's going to make a difference and putting forward resources, then they would be part of getting this bipartisan agreement passed. This is exactly what they've been asking for, literally what Republicans have been asking for. And now here it is. It's coming to fruition. It's being discussed. There's potential bipartisan agreement. That's what the American people want to see. 75% of the American people have said that they want this issue to be dealt with. An issue that, again, that they have been for years. So they should get on board. They should get on board and help.
How does she have a percentage of exactly how many of us are on board with whatever the hell she's talking about? Nobody asked me anything. How am I not included in the percentage of the American people? I don't understand that.
A political football, right? It's like a hot potato. They don't want to hold on to it.
Hot potato, when old man Walter's laying on the beach.
Are talking about as it relates to the border security, coming up with a bipartisan agreement is exactly what they've been talking about. Coming together with a tough, fair, bipartisan agreement that deals with the issue, policy changes, funding, and resources, right, that is needed so that we can deal with what's happening at the border and also really deal with the immigration system.
Too old to care says she's wearing out the sign lady's hands.
The White House could tackle on its own.
It's all the uhs.
So look, I don't want to get into hypotheticals. There's a deal happening. If I answer that, right, then it's getting in the way of the negotiations. I don't want to do that. I want them to have the free space to be able to have honest, good faith conversations as they've been doing for the past 2 months, and we appreciate what's happening in the Senate. We want to let that process go. We think it's moving in the right direction. Obviously, the president supports what's happening. Our team has been working with them for the last 2 months. It is important discussion, and we believe, again, we can get.
I don't think I've ever had an honest, good faith conversation, or at least not a conversation labeled that, but I highly doubt those conversations are happening on Capitol Hill.
Try and work out a bipartisan agreement.
Thanks, Karine. The president said the border deal that's being negotiated in the Senate would give him the power to close the border. Speaker Johnson, however, saying the president already has the authority to do that without congressional action on this. What's your response to that?
So I'll say this. Speaker Johnson has been very clear as well when he was pushing H.R. 2, even during the Trump administration, that presidents need they need actual authority, right? They need authority, enforcement authorities, and they have said this. The Speaker, when he was then Congressman Johnson, said this: a president needs authority to actually deal with the border and actually deal with the security at the border. And so I don't know what's changed. I don't know why all of a sudden he believes that the president already has the authority when he says that the president needs authority. This is something the Trump administration said. This is something that they agreed when the Trump administration said. And so what is being discussed right now in the Senate is a new enforcement tools that do not currently exist. They do not currently exist. And so that's what the president is speaking to, and he says the moment that he has those new enforcement tools, that he will act. The day that he signs it, he will act.
This deal is angering immigration advocates. What's being negotiated does not include anything to address the root problems of migration, and it has nothing included to provide a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers, which is something that President Biden called for legislation he proposed on his first day. So why is the president okay with this?
So we don't even have the text yet to what's being, what the bipartisan agreement is going to be, right? So I don't want to get ahead of that. I'm not going to dive into what's in it, what's not in it. Let's see what the senators put forward in the text. I think that's important to see. And once it's out there, folks will take a look. We believe it's going to be tough but fair. And it's going to provide new enforcement tools, obviously, that's going to be important. Policy changes, it's going to be important, but also resources. That's what we believe. But we're not going to get into what's in it, what's not in it. Let's let the senators continue to do their negotiations and put forward the text.
But we're already seeing immigration advocates slam what's being proposed as callous, as unworkable. So how does the president respond to the message from some people that he's going back on his campaign promise?
I understand. What I'm saying to you is that let's see what the Senate bipartisan agreement is. Let's let them put out the text, and then we can have that discussion on whatever it is that they want to look through and discuss. But right now, we believe this is the best way forward, a bipartisan.
Mr. B News says, I bet she smells like the makeup aisle at Target.
Bipartisan agreement is what we need to deal with what's the challenges that we're seeing. And that's what the Senate is working towards. Go ahead, Michael.
Back in the winter of 2018 and the spring of 2019, President Trump vowed to shut down the border with Mexico using almost the identical language that the president used on Friday. Many, if not most, if not practically all Democrats called that xenophobic and even racist. Why shouldn't people make the same conclusion about this president's threat to shut down the entire border with Mexico?
So we believe the new enforcement tools that currently don't exist, that will be, we believe that will be part of this bipartisan agreement, will be fair. We believe it'll be tough, but it will be fair.
But he didn't say he wanted to use, excuse me, sorry
Yeah,
to
no,
interrupt.
no, no,
He
no,
didn't
no.
say, on day one, I will use enhanced enforcement to improve the processing of people at the border. He said, I will shut the border down, which suggests a total rejection of all people attempting to cross the border without a visa or without proper authorization, which stands in contravention to decades of international and U.S. law that governs the movement of people around the globe and the refugees and asylum system.
Yeah, no,
So why isn't that the same thing that Trump did?
No, I understand your question. What I'm saying to you, the new enforcement tools, right, that we believe that do not currently exist, that will be part of this bipartisan agreement, there are different definitions, right, of what that looks like, of what actually shutting down the border looks like, right? So we're going to let them work through it. We don't know what that looks like exactly, right? What we are asking for, what the president wants to see, is that we deal with the challenges at the border, right? That we have an opportunity to deal with what's going on, the security, and make sure that we have the funding and the resources to deal with what we're seeing at the border. There are different definitions to what that looks like. And so we'll see what the text comes out of the Senate. And so we will certainly have a broader conversation once that happens. But we believe it's going to be fair. It'll be tough. It'll be fair. They'll have the resources available to deal with what's going on at the border, and also there'll be some policy changes as well. But to say that, to define what that looks like right now, it's getting ahead of the process, and we need to let Republicans, both Democrats, they're Democrats.
They're going to let the convoy get there, and this whole story deal is going to change. They're going to blame the convoy for certain decisions being made. Watch.
Deal with this issue, you got to do it in a bipartisan way.
Just to follow up, you've said a couple of times, as you did just now, that we should wait. You don't want to get ahead of the process. I think your answer to the previous question was that we don't know what's in it. Yet the president and the White House have explicitly said it should pass. And so how is it that on the one hand, the president has said, pass this thing and send it to me, but then when asked about it, you say, well, I don't want to get ahead of it, we don't know what's in it. How
Because
could you say you want to pass it when you don't know what's in it?
Here's the thing, both things could be true, and I'll explain why. The White House team has been part of, right, the negotiations, right? And the president has been getting regular updates, right? So obviously, no. What I'm saying is negotiations are still happening. They're literally still happening. They're still discussing this. If I tell you this is happening today, who knows what could happen the next day? And also, I don't want to get ahead of the conversations, right? I don't want to get in the middle of negotiations. And that is true. But the White House team has been really talking to and part of this discussion for the past 2 months. So the president has been getting updates. But at the same time, negotiations are still happening. And that's just the reality that we're in. And talking about that from the podium, that will have an effect on negotiations. And you know that, Michael. It would have an effect on negotiations.
Except the president didn't exhibit that kind of caution over the last few days, right?
For me, from here, I have to exhibit that type of caution. And the president is the president, right? And he wants to give confidence to the American people that he believes this is going to be, yes, it's going to be tough, but it's also going to be fair. And we have to, in order to deal with this situation, and it'll be a historic, if it gets done, this will be a historic deal. But, we have to get this done in a bipartisan way. We truly do. Go ahead, MJ.
Green, the families of some of the American hostages are back in Washington this week. Is the president willing to meet with them again?
I don't have anything to read out. As you know, Jake Sullivan, the president himself, Secretary Blinken, have met with the family of the hostages in the past. Just don't have anything to read out on his schedule at this time.
And just we reported last week that the president had met with some of the ceasefire advocates backstage at the UAW conference. I wondered whether this is a kind of conversation that the president is willing to have more of these kinds of conversations going forward, given the immense pressure that he is facing from advocates calling for a ceasefire, calling on him to support a ceasefire.
Yeah, so, it's hard to say if he's going to have regular conversations. Look, the president, it's not the first time that the president has had conversations with protesters from whatever side certainly of the issue that they're on. The president, he says this all the time, he's the president for all Americans. That's something that he believes. He's always willing to hear people out. And he believes, and we've said this before, when it comes to protesters, Americans have the right for their voices to be heard, just as long as they do it peacefully. And so hearing that, what the president speaking to protesters, that's who he is. He's going to listen to Americans and hear what they have to say, just as long as they do it peacefully. I just don't have anything else to read out.
Do you have anything you could share just from his end, how he spoke to these ceasefire advocates?
I don't have anything to read out. Gotcha.
Is the White House tracking the latest developments with Evergrande, the Chinese real estate company that Hong Kong is now ordering it to be unraveled, and the implications that will have for the Chinese economy and potentially the global economy?
So I've seen those reports. I just don't have anything to share on the president, where the president is on being briefed about that.
If his econ team is watching it and has a view on it, we'd love to hear it.
We will make sure we get back to you on that. Go ahead, Ed.
Thanks, Grant. So the Department of Energy has finalized a rule for energy savings standards on appliances like refrigerators, washing machines, wine beverage chillers, freezers, clothes dryers, dishwashers, electric gas, and stovetops. So is our kitchen one of the root causes that's killing the environment?
So let me just start from the top here, because I do have a couple things to say. As you just stated, the Department of Energy today, they finalized a congressionally mandated energy efficiency standard for residential cooking, as you just laid out, the different products. And what it will do, it's going to reduce household utility costs while improving appliance reliability and performance, which is really important. The standards, these standards, which reflect a joint recommendation from a wide range of stakeholders, including the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers and Consumer Federation of America. They are projected to save Americans approximately $1.6 billion on their utility bills over 30 years. And so this administration is always committed to using every tool at our disposal to lower costs. This is certainly an option here.
I don't think we need the government involved in our appliances. Thanks, though.
Altogether, the energy efficiency standards advanced by this administration will provide nearly $1 trillion in consumer savings.
But the standards, the effects of the standards outweigh the cost of the regulations to the companies that have to build these things with workers. And do the effects to the environment? Do the effects to the environment outweigh the added costs of the regulations for new manufacturing plants to be built, changing standards, redesigning equipment, that kind of thing?
So look, we're talking about making sure that these products are efficient, right? Making sure that they're working in a way that's not just, that obviously still have the performance that they need, obviously protecting the environment. But I think one other big benefit, as I just laid out, is making sure that we're saving Americans money. I think that's important. That's important that we're able to do that. $1.6 billion over 30 years. That's what Americans want to see. And let's not forget, this is a congressionally mandated energy efficiency. So this is something that Congress went through. This is something that they evaluated, and that's how it got put forward to the Department of Energy. So this has had a lot of eyes on it, right? This has had a lot of research to make sure that this was the right thing to do for the American family.
Trust the science. Here we are back again.
Iran, actually, it could.
I'm going to make some coffee really quick while she's sitting here lying to us. I'll be right back.
Stopping or reducing their benefit from oil sales.
I just don't have anything to share on that particular thing. As the president said himself yesterday, after he acknowledged the 3 souls that were taken from us, our service members, who bravely protect our national security and obviously us as a country. He said that we shall respond. So I'm just going to not get ahead of that. Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks a lot, Green. On the border, when the president said that he would shut down the border, does that mean that the president would temporarily sign off on shutting down border crossings at ports of entry?
I'm not going to get into specifics and details. The president is very clear. He wants to make sure that we deal with the border security, that we deal with the challenges at the border. And he has said if these new authorities, right, these new enforcement authorities were made into law, obviously he would use it. They're working through the text, right? The Senate is working through the text on what that looks like, how that is defined. So not going to get into specifics from here.
Give us a little bit more about what the president meant when he said he would shut down the border.
Well, it's very clear.
He'd stop people from being able to cross back and forth for,
What he
jobs,
wants to
for
do
employment,
is
for trade.
No, I hear you. What he wants to do is make sure that we deal with the challenges at the border. That is what he wants to make sure that we do. He wants the new authorities, the new enforcement tools that is being discussed, that he believes, if it's put into law, will help him deal with the issues at the border. And not just that, we're talking about immigration policy, actually doing meaningful changes to immigration policy so that we can deal with a broken system, a broken immigration system that has been broken for some decades now. And so we'll have some, I'm sure once they come and have a bipartisan agreement, the text will be released, and then we'll have more to share there. I think I have to go. I have to go.
Is what you're saying, right?
Well,
Shut down
I'll
the
say
border
this.
means shut down the border?
I'll say this. The first day of his administration, the president took this issue very seriously. He put forth a comprehensive piece of legislation to deal with what's happening with the immigration. You don't get to decide, but you don't get to decide what I say and what I don't say. Either you hear me out, or we can, I'll see you on Wednesday. Totally up to you. Totally up to you.
I just want to know if he means
All right.
what he says.
Okay.
I guess not.
He means what he says. Not going to go into details here. Here's the reality. The immigration system is broken. It's been broken for decades, even in the last administration. The president introduced this piece of legislation 3 years ago. House Republicans got in the way. They refused to do anything about it. Now he's in this position to have a bipartisan agreement that the Senate has been working on with Republicans and Democrats on a real solution to move forward. 75% of the American people, majority of the American people, want us to work on this issue. And they've been very clear. The 2022 midterm elections, what did they say? They want to see Congress doing things in a bipartisan way to really address the issues that matter to them. Here's this president actually working with Republicans and Democrats to deal with this issue. That's important. And I think that's what the American people care about. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Okay. God, KJP. I don't miss covering the press briefing at all. Not at all. Bunch of lies. I just wanted to hear if they were going to say we were going to war or not. Or if they were going to bitch about the convoy. I was waiting for that too. But nope, they didn't want to talk about it, so that's fine. Next up, we got a video titled Take Our Border Back. Convoy heading to southern border for rallies. It's a summary. It's what the news thinks the border convoy situation's going to be versus whatever it is going to be. After we're done with Coffee with Hooligans today, I'm just reminding you guys because we had technical errors earlier. After Coffee with Hooligans, we're going to be covering the convoy until there's just no live streams to cover. So that's the plan today. If you weren't here at the beginning, we're going to read through the chat. Holy shit. It sounded like a car just hit the building. Well, we'll see how that goes. Anyways, we're going to get started on this first video here. Take Our Border Back convoy heading to the southern border for rallies. But first, we're going to read through the chat and see how much you guys like KJP. Christy Star, run fast. I know, she spent the whole time at the podium. She was like leaning like this, like her feet wanted to get out of the door before she was done talking. They were getting riled up today. Kirby, Captain Hot Dog Fingers there was getting all mad at the one reporter. Had to just stop taking questions, and then KJP double mad. They both were getting ready to rage quit today. All mad. I don't even know what they show up for anymore. They don't ever say anything that's worth listening to. Cash flow, it's not all over. You don't just stay for the lies. It's not worth it. Just Michelle. Lamestream Media is already calling the convoy. Oh, I can't even say that. Yeah, that whole jab thing, you know how people call it the jab? YouTube knows what you're talking about. That's how I got my last strike. Yeah, I can't talk about that while YouTube is live and running. I don't even know if we're going to show the convoy on YouTube. I really don't want to. I can't stand the YouTube platform. Anyways, we'll just get started on this and we'll decide how I feel about YouTube afterwards. This is titled, Take Our Border Back, Convoy Heading to the Southern Border for Rallies. If you guys are over on Rumble, make sure you hit that like button. We could easily be on the front page. Alright, let's get this started.
A convoy of truckers will make its way to the southern border to draw attention to the worsening migrant crisis. All of this coming weeks after more than 300,000 migrants crossed into the U.S. in December. That is a record-setting month for encounters along the U.S.-Mexico border. Tom Dempsey is in Norfolk, Virginia this morning, which is where the convoy will be leaving from. Tom, you set the stage and the scene for us this morning. Who is this group?
Yeah, well, it's describing this event, and the organizers are describing it as the Take Our Border Back convoy, and they expect hundreds of people to be part of this. It's all starting here at this parking lot here in Norfolk, Virginia, in just about 2 hours. And like I said, they expect hundreds of people to be part of this as they get set to travel across the country, all to put the focus on the ongoing border crisis. So after meeting up here in Virginia later this morning, this group plans to make multiple stops, heading to Jacksonville, Florida, then Louisiana, then to some of the hot spots regarding migrant crossings, including Eagle Pass, Texas, Yuma, Arizona, and San Ysidro, California, where they plan to hold rallies this upcoming Saturday. This all comes ahead of a big week dealing with the border crisis issue. Tomorrow, House Republicans plan to mark up 2 articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. They accuse Mayorkas of failing to manage the border and say he is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors. The articles of impeachment describe Mayorkas as failing to enforce U.S. immigration policies at the border and disregarding laws passed by Congress, as well as breaching public trust. House Speaker Mike Johnson has vowed to hold a vote as soon as possible, but it's, we will note, even if the House ends up impeaching Mayorkas, it remains very unlikely that the Senate, controlled by Democrats, would convict him in a trial. And just a little bit of history here with this impeachment vote coming up possibly soon. Mayorkas could become the first presidential cabinet member in almost 150 years to be impeached. But like you said, Marky, the timing of this convoy happening later this morning, it comes after the last fiscal year set a record for encounters along the southern border. U.S. Customs and Border Protection data show that December set a monthly record for encounters along the border, with over 300,000 encounters recorded. Again, these organizers expect to kick things off in just about 2 hours from this parking lot here in Virginia, Marky.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com.
Well, Mayorkas, or whatever, however you say his name, he should absolutely be impeached. He's done everything except for his job. And they keep saying, well, that's all the options they got left is to impeach him. Well, then, get it rolling then. Go ahead and impeach him, because he ain't doing his job. I think it's interesting how they talk about the convoy. I imagine it's going to go differently. Things will start going south as the week goes on. They'll find reasons to talk bad about him. They did it with the last convoy. It just didn't get much coverage until the very end. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, we'll be covering the convoy later today after Coffee with Hooligans. We'll be hanging out with everybody on the road and whatnot, learning who's all live, who's all involved, what the plans are, and all of that. Excited to see how it goes. Hopefully everybody keeps their brain attached. It'd be really easy for things to get hijacked and go sideways. So we'll see how it goes. Awesome, Edward. I appreciate you. Matt, yeah, well, yeah. Honestly, they're talking about impeachment. He should be getting arrested. He's helping Old Man Walter's whole administration. Treason. All of it. Next up, we have 3 U.S. troops killed in Jordan drone strike. This is what made me want to cover the press briefing. I wanted to see if they talked about the convoy, and I wanted to see what they were saying about this drone strike situation. Because, you know, they love war. They love war. So if they could find a way to get us involved, they absolutely will. Scorp, just come here full time. We do Rumble and jeffmaclive.com full time. I try to include Kick when I can. We just don't have a lot of people that watch on Kick. But I try to include Kick when I can. Mr. Beans Beans, wonder how Mayorkas would feel if these freeloaders were living on his property. They should have to find out. That's what they should do. These people should be shuttling buses of border crossers to their front yard. I think they did it to Hyena Harris, and they've done it to a couple other people, and they should continue to do that. If they don't like it, they should close the border. What's up, Jerry? Happy freedom. Appreciate you being here. All right, we're going to move on to this next one. 10 Man, you've been watching the convoy all morning. I watched some of it. A lot of road. You know, a lot of staring at the road. So I was watching some of it, but I was also trying to get up to date with, you know, what's been going on in the last 24 hours. So we're going to cover this now. 3 U.S. troops killed in Jordan drone strike. It's a short video. All right, let's get it started.
3 U.S. service members were killed and dozens more wounded after a drone attack on U.S. forces stationed in Jordan. A person familiar with the matter identified the base as Tower 22 in northeastern Jordan, an outpost near the Syrian border, shown in this still taken before the attack. U.S. Central Command said at least 34 were injured, with that number expected to change as more seek care. It's the first deadly strike against U.S. forces since the Israel-Hamas war erupted in October, and sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East. Jordan, which holds extensive exercises with U.S. troops throughout the year, condemned the attack in a statement. At a campaign stop in South Carolina on Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden asked for a moment of silence for the fallen soldiers and vowed to respond.
And we shall respond.
In a statement, the White House blamed Iran-backed groups for the attack. The Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella organization of hardline Iran-backed militant groups, claimed attacks on 3 bases, including one on the Jordan-Syria border. U.S. forces have come under attack more than 150 times by Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria since October. While the United States has maintained that Washington is not at war in the region, it has been retaliating against the Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria and carrying out strikes against Yemen's Houthi military capabilities.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to say about that. It's shitty that they did that. I don't know what else to say. We need to stop putting our troops in places that just don't matter for stupid reasons. That's about it. Otherwise, I was just trying to see if they were going to try and send us to war. So far, it's just scare talk. Bunch of scare talk. Next up, we have Jesse Waters. This is Bizarre to Watch. Coming up next. So first, we're going to read through the chat, see what you hooligans think about the whole drone strike situation and all of that. I think it's interesting how sometimes our troops die and they say it's a plane crash. Oh yeah, something happened, plane just crashed. I don't know, you know, this just happened. And then other times it's a drone strike. It's like they dictate how the stories go whenever it's convenient. Sounds like our government, doesn't it? Sounds like par for the course. Edward, troops should not be in any war. They are pawns in the New World Order's game board. They should be here securing our homeland. I agree. Matt, protecting every country but ours. Yep. I think the government likes sending all the troops overseas, so we're thin here. If anything happened here, how long would it take to bring troops back? Have to bring them here to defend home. As Russell Biden thinks the real enemy is the U.S. Yeah. Yep. I don't think he thinks at all. I think he just wanders around. It's everyone around him doing all the thinking. And that's the problem. Speedy Girl died in a training exercise. Yeah. Yep, exactly. I think they say this stuff just so Americans don't get mad when stupid shit happens and then Americans die overseas, our troops. And they don't want to be like, They don't want to take blame for it, basically. They don't want to be like, yeah, we sent them over there for really stupid reasons. Now they died. Darn. Well, then we'd be all mad. But when they're like, well, they died in an accident, you know, you can't be mad at us. Accidents happen. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know. We need new people on Capitol Hill. Need a redo. What's up, Tom? Happy freedom. Appreciate you being here. Alright, hooligans. You hear me flipping my chapstick? It's getting more and more rattly. I'm telling you, I wonder how many flips I do in a day. Anyways, I want to remind you guys really quick before we move on to this next video, if you would like to participate in Free Speech Saturday, post all of your memes and sightings of Old Man Walter either on Gilded or jeffmaclive.com. Just go to the group chats on either platform. You'll see tabs labeled memes and Where's Walter. Go ahead and fill them up and I will shout you out as we're making Saturdays a little more fun. This is Jesse Waters. This is just bizarre to watch. Let's get it started.
So we have a little update for you in the Fani Willis Loverboy scandal. Today, a Georgia judge heard the case to release all information about the conversations Fani's office had with the White House. Remember, Fani partied with Kamala last year. Loverboy met with Biden White House lawyers, and Schiff colluded with Fani on the Georgia case.
The White House has its fingerprints on all 4 criminal prosecutions of President Trump. And now we know they have their fingerprints on this case.
This alleged affair and collusion with the White House is causing a local revolt in Georgia. Fulton County residents want to defund the DA's office.
It is clear we have abuse in the DA's office.
I do not support what Fani Willis is doing with my tax money.
I'm disgusted at the information that is coming out of the district attorney's office as a taxpayer. I am done with most of your silence at the DA's apparent love affair with the special prosecutor and gross mismanagement of taxpayers' dollars to pursue what appears to be a frivolous lawsuit based off of partisan politics. Apparently, guys like me need to court Fulton County female executives if we want a free ride at all paid expense.
Fani's turning Fulton County into MAGA country. And then something happened. Something always happens, and it was bizarre.
Take me to church, I worship you, dog. You're the light of my life. Please forgive me my sins, but I would fall on a knife. I go to work, I get my freak on. Take me to church, I write a check, they let me say a few words. Do I gotta do everything?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I doubt they're going to do anything to this attorney. They don't care. They don't care about the corrupt politicians out in New York and all that. They don't care. I don't know what the crazy lady was screaming about at the end there. She was there with her big hot dog. She was passionate. That's all I really know. I just don't see it. We have no accountability anywhere from top to bottom. I highly doubt anything will happen to her. I doubt she'll be punished. They'll probably just let it go through. They'll talk about it for a little bit, but then they'll just let it happen. And seeing those people stand up at the podium and express how upset they are on how the city is wasting their tax dollars and stuff like that, that's what KJP would be listening to if she actually knew what 40 or 50% of the country wanted and stuff. Like she's always saying, well, 43% of the American people want this. How the fuck do you know? You don't know shit, KJP. Like, where do you get those numbers from? Your ass. That's where they come from. Stupid. 10-man bitch lost her mind. She did. Right there in front of everybody, too. Just, I don't know what she showed up to do. Edward, your ex is getting out of hand. I know. Someone needs to go tell her to chill out a little bit. My goodness. My goodness. Got to call the pound on that one. Next up, we have someplace in Illinois. Affluent? I don't know. We got to ask Serum. Affluent Illinois suburb ditches controversial migrant housing sign-up sheet. This video is quite a doozy. It sounds like really liberal for the whole first half of this. But then the guy at the end is basically like, oh, so when I suggest a sign-up sheet for you to allow the border crossers into your home, You don't want to let them in your home, but you want to vote for old man Walter to let them in the country for the first place. Okay. He's like, so you want to vote to have them come in, but you don't want them to come all the way up into your house and take care of them. You just want them to be here, but we all got to take care of them. Oh, okay. And it's like there's a twist at the end, so be ready for it. Let's get it started.
Last week, we spoke to a councilman in Illinois who called on wealthy residents to open up their homes to migrants. Ashley, good morning to you. Are they reversing course?
Good morning. Oh, yes, they are. The affluent suburb of Naperville, it's about 30 miles west of Chicago, decided to ditch that controversial migrant housing proposal. City Council member Josh McBroom made headlines when he suggested a sign-up sheet for those willing to open their homes to migrants. It may have been tongue-in-cheek, but McBroom said his proposal was aimed at residents whose votes led to Biden's open border policy. He joined this very program last week. Watch this.
I'm not surprised that no one's interested. So it is a challenge to individuals that voted for an open border policy. We have a problem here. So you can either, here's a sign-up sheet, extol your virtue, live your virtues, or contact your state legislatures. Contact your reps and tell them to secure the border.
Yeah, well, no one came forward. He made his point for sure, but the City Council says it's decided that local residents can keep their spare bedrooms for now as state and federal agencies were lining up shelters for migrants in need of housing. Stu.
All right, got it. Ashley, thanks so much indeed.
I like that. He's like, if you don't want to sign up to have these border crossers living with you, then stop voting for them to come here in the first place. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. Edward, I don't think it's the feds. And I said, someone's at the door. I'll be back in a bit. Edward's like, it's the feds. Better not be. Better not be. 10 man, get ready for hours of live streaming this week, Hooligans. It's going to be a good one. I hope so. I hope it turns out good. I really don't want to see it turn into a J6 or anything of that. I'm kind of surprised at how much negative publicity it's already got. Sort of. I'm kind of surprised. What I also think is weird is that they're running around telling everybody that there's going to be 700,000 trucks participating in the convoy. Where did they get that number from? I don't know. That sounds really weird. And then I also wonder how the glowies are going to participate, because they're absolutely going to be a part of it. I just wonder what part will they play as everything unfolds. I guess we'll know as we cover it, because we'll be covering it all week. That's the plan. Reading through the chat really quick. Next up we have Biden says Trump is the sitting president. We're going to cover this video and then we're going to cut off YouTube because the last video has music in it and I'm just not dealing with YouTube shit. Honestly, I've allowed YouTube to be here far too long today, but I'm just in one of those giving moods, so that's why YouTube's still around. I don't know about the convoy. We'll see how the convoy goes. If you're over on YouTube, I'm telling you, you see those links on the screen. You need to head over to Rumble, make you an account, or jeffmaclive.com. YouTube is always in the wind. Next up, we got Biden says Trump is sitting president. But first, I want to remind you guys over on Rumble, if you would like to join the membership program, you have to click that big red subscribe button in order to do so. If you're on Android and you're using their app, you're not able to see the big red subscribe button, so you got to go to rumble.com, come to the live, hop in the chat. Right below where you type in the chat, you'll see that big red subscribe button. Click that button, jump through the hoops, and your name will be highlighted in the chat as you are an official hooligan. You'll have access to all of our custom emojis. We got chapstick emojis, screaming goat emojis, Klaus Daniels emojis, President Trump emojis, and more. It's a lot of fun during Trump rallies and all of that, and you'd be helping support the live, keeping us running. So definitely join the membership program over on Rumble. We're going to read through the chat, and then we're going to hear how stupid old man Walter is. Happy freedom, Sam. I keep meaning to say hello to you. I keep getting sidetracked. I appreciate you being here, Sam. And I thought it was a lot of fun hanging out at the voice chat also. It's getting better every week. I think we've done 3 voice chats now. We're doing it every Saturday. If you don't know, every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, we head over to jeffmaclive.com. Hop in the voice chat or video chat, whichever you prefer, and just hang out with the hooligans, doing some mingling. It's a lot of fun. A lot of times we're laughing and stuff. First day was a little rough, a little bumpy. getting everybody figured out with their settings and whatnot, how to turn the camera on, turn your mic on, things like that. But man, last Saturday ran really smooth. I thought it was a good time. Thoughtbot, I slapped the shit out of Biden. My goodness, Thoughtbot, you gotta chill out. You gotta chill out like that. It's gonna be hard to prosecute a robot. Tell the feds that. Courtly, I love dogs more than people. You ain't alone. You're not alone. Let's see. Zerxo, the actor misspoken, as usual. Absolutely. Holy 379 hooligans over on Rumble. Make sure you guys hit that like button. I appreciate all of you being over here on a platform that doesn't hate you. Melissa, the convoy is listed as a peaceful protest that Fed code for Antifa incited violence. Yeah, we're going to see how it goes. I think the Glowies are going to infiltrate it early on. I'm waiting to see when the shenanigans could begin. It could be on the road. Somebody, participants in the convoy start misbehaving. Now the police get involved. Now they're monitoring the convoy. Or will it be the destinations where they end up at the end of the day, mid-journey? A lot of times they gather, they have a meeting or something like that. Or at least that's how the last convoy went. Will we have some bad guys show up there and do dumb stuff that, causes problems, causes the police to show up? That's what I'm kind of watching out for. I'm just thinking about all the things that happened the last time we covered the convoy. We'll see how this turns out. Just reading through. Mr. Beansy Beans, I also wonder if Soros is going to bail out Fannie. Maybe. Maybe. You never know. Soros is involved in everything. And politicians know that. They talk about it just on the news. They're just like, oh yeah, we got corrupt politicians that are controlled by this guy. We know who they are. We know who they work for. We know what they're willing to do. And it just really sucks. And it's like, what do you mean it sucks? Do something about it. Pull them assholes out of office. Well, they don't. Grey Wolf, who is streaming the convoy? We're streaming the convoy. Jerry, feds, and not FedEx. Nah, they're probably feds too. What's up, Arlene? Happy freedom. All right, hooligans, we're moving on to this next one here. This is Biden says that Trump is the sitting president. I was thinking about this whole time we were watching KJP, saying, old man Walter knows what he's talking about. When he speaks, I believe him. Okay, well, I hope she heard this then.
That American consumers are facing real confidence in their economy we're building. Let me tell you who else is noticing that. Donald Trump. Did you see what he recently said about that he wants to see the economy crash this year? A sitting president. As they say in my faith, bless me, Father, that Americans.
Donald Trump, the sitting president. You're right, old man Walter. That's the third greatest thing he's ever done. First being the MAGA king. Then he came out with MAGAnomics. And now he's telling us President Trump is the sitting president. Holy shit, old man Walter, you might be onto something. Well, I gotta end the live over on YouTube because this next video has music in it. And YouTube's racist, so, whatever. If you're on YouTube, leave the platform. They hate your guts. Just go ahead and leave YouTube. They suck over there. But we're currently live on Twitch, Kick, Rumble, jeffmaclive.com, as well as Twitter. So for all of you hooligans over on YouTube, you know where to go. What's up, Moby? Happy freedom. Appreciate you joining the live. All right. Let's get this wrapped up. My rattly chapstick. I need the silencer. I'm gonna put the silencer on it. There we go. Nice.